Hello everyone and welcome to Fan Sports Varsity. I'm your host Frank Langella, joined by my co-host Marcilio Langella. Mars, this is our week 6. We're talking about 1B, 1C and D, and the Independent League. We got some championship games, man. The last week of the season. You're going to see a bunch of mixture of championship games and some teams, playing some youngins, rotating some youngins to give them experience. It's definitely an interesting week, man.
Yeah, man, I feel like like I said in the other video, we talked to a lot of players and coaches. This is just flying by this year, and I think that just the fact that we're playing football is already a blessing within itself, and it's going to be a title game galore. What we're talking about today. So let's get right into it.
Absolutely, and I know Pearl River beat. We usually put out our videos on Thursday night or Wednesday night, mostly Thursday night, but. We had a Wednesday game. Obviously, Hen Hud beat Pearl River in impressive fashion, and Hen Hud, finishes the season 4-1. So big shout out to Hen Hud. We saw a bunch of big plays by Cepeda and Travis and that defense. But let's talk about that slate, Mars. We're going to go over a couple games, mostly focusing on the championship games, and then pick all the games at the end. But we got Rhinebeck at Bronxville, Blindbrook at Valhalla, Hastings at Edgemont, Mount Vernon and Ossining in the championship game, Independent League, Croton Harmon at Irvington, Woodlands at Dobbs. Haldane at Tuckahoe in their annual D championship game. Albertus Magnus at Briarcliff, another championship game. Westlake at Byron Hills, a championship game. And Pleasantville at Nanuet to wrap it all off, Mars. But let's talk about it. I mentioned we want to focus in on the championship games for this show. And let's start with the independent one. The big school independent league. Mount Vernon 3-1 at Ossining, who's 3-1. This is the AAA championship in the independent league. This is a rematch from their 4-3 matchup that Ossining won 17-8. Last week, Mount Vernon beat Peekskill in the semifinals. Ossining beat Ramapo in the semifinals to get back to this dance. So let's start with Mount Vernon. To me, offensively, the bulk up front is a big strength for this team. They want to move bodies. They want to push people around and get the backs into some space so that they can use their speed and hit some big plays. We obviously saw early in the year what Bennett did. He had over 200 yards. I think it was against Peekskill. That's their game plan, right? They got some bulk up front, move some dudes, spread you out, get these backs into the open field, and hit some home run plays. And that's what I think it's going to be. I know Ossining kind of did a good job of preventing big plays, but to me it starts up front. Up front's got to win because Ossining has some good size, and they're going to want to try to penetrate. This front on Mount Vernon is going to dictate if they come away as a champion. So we're going to see what happens on that one. Defensively, Mars, again, I talk about it. It's the same size up front. Moving to the defensive side, they take up a lot of space, and they allow these linebackers and edge guys to roam free. I mean, one of their nose guards, Sloan, is over 300 pounds, Mars. But a guy who really impressed me last week, Nazir John. He was Low Hud's Player of the Week, Mars. He had 8 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery touchdown. Had a ridiculous game. This front is going to have to play well, and it's going to have to be led by Nazir John. The Ossining front is another group that has a lot of size. They're going to try to run downhill on you, so they're going to have to cause some penetration versus this Ossining rush attack. Another guy I want to keep in mind in the linebackers, kind of outside linebacker, strong safety spot, Shamar Johnson. He's a very active defender. Doesn't get enough kudos out on there. He makes some nice plays. They send him off the edge. They're very aggressive with their defenders. So he likes to penetrate, make some plays in the backfield, tackles pretty solid in open field. And he's going to have to be against this rush attack in Ossining. Mars, what are your thoughts on Mount Vernon?
I mean, yeah, Mount Vernon's offensive line is really what's been impressing me so far. They've just really been giving their backs a lot of opportunities to make big plays, and they're going to have to do the same thing this week. I think if the offensive line continues to play well and even just performs more than what they've done already, then you're going to see an offense that's going to be moving the ball quite often. And I think that's going to be a heavy run style, but they definitely can make play. Their offense can do a lot of different things, but it's really, like I said, depending on how well the offensive line plays this week. And the same thing can be said about the other side of the ball. Defensive line needs to really perform. Specifically, the DTs need to kind of stay put because Austin's going to try to run you over. The defensive ends need to set the edge, and linebackers need to play aggressive at the line of scrimmage because they're going to just come right at you. And if you play soft, you play back, they're just going to just keep pounding the rock. And hopefully, for your sake, for Mount Vernon's sake, you need to really show up this week, and you need to play aggressive and in their face.
Absolutely. And going to Austin, Mars, this rush attack has also been very impressive, very potent. Last week, they rushed for 426 yards as a team. And to me, it starts with this offensive line. Guys like Hamilton, Cruz, Bernardo, these guys are they have some solid size, good bulk, move people around. This is going to be a trench battle. We talked about Mount Vernon's size. Austin's got some good size as well, so that's going to be a strong indicator of where this game is going in the front lines. But I don't go to the running back. Terrell Francis has really shown out. Last week, 235 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Really been a force for this offense the last couple of weeks, and he's going to be the focal point for their offense this week. But he's not alone. Guys like Hawkins, 103 yards rushing. Hallinan, 93 yards rushing. They run that wing T stuff. And I thought what really worked for them the first time they played Mount Vernon, the counteraction. I thought the counteraction got them to hit some big plays. Mount Vernon wants to be aggressive. See if you can get them on some misdirection and stay ahead of the chains. That's what I think is going to happen offensively on the Ossining side. Defensively, again, Mount Vernon likes to hit big plays, so you really got to prevent big plays. Get Mount Vernon into passing downs because your defense the last couple of weeks has been forcing turnovers. I mean, Gallery had 2 interceptions last week. You know, this is where they want to prevent those long running plays, get them back behind the chains. And I thought Ossining did a good job of that the first time they played them. So I think the script is going to be very similar. So we're going to see exactly how the rematch goes. But Ossining, I think, has shown the game plan. And I think they're going to try to duplicate that this time around, Mars. What are your thoughts on Ossining?
Yeah, Ossining also has strength, and I think that it's going to be, as you mentioned, a battle for the trenches or a battle for the line of scrimmage. And I think that whoever wins on the offensive side versus like the outside defensive front on the other team, Ossining versus Mount Vernon, I think that if Ossining's O-line can kind of win that advantage, their offense is going to be pushing down the field because I think that they're going to run right at you. They're going to run downhill and they're going to try to force and really kind of tire you out. I mean, they're going to wear you down over time, and it comes the same way defensively. I mean, this is going to be a battle of the size, battle of the big man, and I think that you look at the defensive side of the ball. I think it's going to be dependent on how well this front can hold off a lot of these big plays and really force your secondary to play the pass really well, win the early downs, force Mount Vernon to have to throw, and then just let your secondary go to work.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this matchup, Mars, this Ossining offensive line versus the Mount Vernon D-line. That's going to be a huge indicator for this game. Let's go to the other Independent League Championship, Mars. This is the smaller school one. Albertus Magnus 4-1. What a year they have had. At Briarcliff, who's 3-0. 2 very impressive teams. Briarcliff has had a really good year last year. Albertus Magnus, they didn't have a win last year, so this is a great turnaround for them. They deserve a lot of credit. But let's start with Albertus Magnus, right? Offensively, it starts with their offensive line. I thought they've done a decent job. It was a huge question mark going in. I talked about this on the show before, but they've done a good job of piecing this together, and those kids deserve a lot of credit, and the offensive line coach deserves a lot of credit, but they are going against a very tough front in Briarcliff. To me, their rush attack is definitely their most potent part of their offense, and it starts with Cody Johnson. I think he's their best two-way player. He was a Frank's finest, and for good reason. He is the engine of this offense. All eyes are going to be focused on him, and obviously he's going to get a heavy dose of run plays in this championship game. But another guy to keep in mind, they've had some injuries, Albertus Magnus, in the running back spot. We talked about LaRusso being hurt last time on the show. Running back and defensive back, number 12. And I want to make sure, his name is Savor. His first name, I think, is Gamilio. He's a freshman. Right, this is a young guy. Last week, Mars had his first carry, went for 48 yards on a touchdown. I mean, he has really good speed when you watch him play. Really good speed. They have high praises for him, and he's going to be a nice change of pace because Cody Johnson is more of a power runner. He can hit some big plays too. More of the power runner, and Savor is going to be kind of that speed guy, and they're going to need both of them. But to me, I think with this front of Briarcliff, they're going to try to stop the run, and it might open up things for their quarterback Maher to make some plays to guys like Frank Amano. So, the offensive line is going to be big in this game because they have to prevent penetration, and that's what Briarcliff likes to do, especially off the edge. And I'm interested to see if they try to run underneath them. Because those edge guys are so aggressive, do they try to run underneath it? Do they try to get some quick throws out there, keep this group off balance? That's going to be big offensively. Defensively, Mars, when we talk about all the independent league, the big schools, the small schools, all of them, you line them all up, the number one defense is Albertus Magnus, Mars. They're the number one defense in the independent league. They allowed 12 points or fewer in all 5 games, including 3 games where it was 7 or less points. This defense is aggressive. They rally well to the ball. Now they're going up against a lot of weapons in Briarcliff, Mars, a lot of them, with a really solid offensive line. So this is going to be a really tough test. There's a bunch of names Briarcliff likes to spread you out, get their playmakers the ball. To me, if Albertus Magnus, they do a really good job of being aggressive and trying to penetrate. But when Savage is out, he's out wide. When they go out into their trips motions or any 2x2s, you're going to have to dictate your coverage that way, because that's how that guy's a game wrecker, and he can take the top off of defense, especially if they come out with trips and Rispoli and Savage are on the same side. To me, defensively, it's got to be a pick your poison, right? There's a bunch of weapons that they have out there. You try to take the least poison of the pill, right? So Albertus Magnus, they're going to be probably focusing in on Savage and Rispoli and trying to force other guys to make plays. Mars, what are your thoughts on Albertus Magnus?
Albertus Magnus has been a shocking team. I mean, they just been, like you said, having one win last year and now really just showing out to be a top team in the independent league. And they really have focused a lot about their rush offense. They've just been lethal on no matter who's getting the ball. I mean, Savora has been very impressive as a freshman. I think he's shown very good speed and very good elusiveness. And
he was a defensive back, but he got his first carry. He went 48 yards right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something now you look at and say, wow, we now have more people that can kind of carry the rock, and just opens up the playbook more, opens up what you can do as an offense even more. And as you mentioned, it's going to be up to Maher to really kind of take advantage of the big plays. He needs to make big plays when you need it. When the game is, when you have the opportunity to throw, you got to make the big play, right? And I think that's going to be really important for Albertus Magnus to really push their offense forward against a really good Briarcliff team. Defensively, I think that you show how good you are by really just keeping the points low, right? 12 points per game, number one defense in the independent, right?
The entire independent league.
Entire independent league. I think that you have to now play aggressive against this long list of skill players that you're playing against, and it's going to be really tough, but I think that it's possible. I think you have to win the line of scrimmage and then cause some mayhem, cause Briarcliff to make a mistake, and then you can just capitalize on that.
And a point to that defense is there's a couple ways. When they come out in passing situations, you can go to max coverage or you can bring pressure. So I'm interested to see what Albertus Magnus does. To me, I would lean towards pressure because you don't want the quarterback to have time. Because if he's going to consistently get these guys the ball in space, it's going to be a long day. But another thing Albertus Magnus has to do, Mars, they got to tackle well in space. That's going to be big in this game versus these skill guys. Let's go to Briarcliff, Mars. And we talked about the number one defense, Albertus Magnus. The number one offense in the independent league is Briarcliff, Mars. They average 29 points a game. I really like the way the offensive line played. We knew that they would be a strength of this team. They have a really mix of good offensive line and a bunch of weapons. I mean, we talk about wide receivers like Savage, Rispoli, Morrow. At the running back spot, Proctor is another guy who's played really solid. And even their quarterback, Milano, has been, he's done a solid job. I know they rotate Savage at quarterback sometimes, Milano at quarterback. So they have a bunch of weapons, Mars. We know this. And I think they're most potent when they come out in two running back sets with a tight end or two running back sets and three wide receivers. Because what it does is Savage is usually out at the wide receiver spot. Morrow is out at another wide receiver spot. Rispoli's in the backfield, and if you have two backs, it's Proctor right next to him. That creates a lot of headaches for a defense, Mars, because you can't dictate. That's when you really got to pick your poison. Where are you going to dictate your coverage? Where are you going to force your resources to? So that's when I think they're the most deadly. But to me, when I look at this offensive line up front, and their ability to move people, move the line of scrimmage, that is what makes this offense so lethal. You can have all the weapons in the world, but if you don't have the bodies up front to move people and to protect the quarterback, you're not gonna be consistently explosive, and that's what Briarcliff has. But a guy that is not talked about enough in whether it's low odd circles or independent league circle, Rispoli. Rispoli is one of their most versatile players. He can line up in the backfield. He can line up in the slot. He catches the ball. He runs the ball. I mean, this guy is having a really impressive season. I love his versatility. I really like a bunch of these guys, but Rispoli is an unsung hero for them offensively. And I'm expecting, because people are going to be dictating the Savage, that he's going to get a nice opportunity. Defensively, Mars, we're also talking about the number two defense. And we talk about, the best part about this defense to me is the defensive front. Guy like Davis at the defensive tackle spot who caused a lot of internal penetration. And how about defensive end, Mars? Primack. This kid is 6'4", 225 pounds. He has been a menace, stopping outside runs, rushing the passer. This guy is going to be a big problem for Albertus Magnus. They got to be focusing on blocking him. because he causes a lot of problems, a lot of penetration, and he also allows these linebackers to run free because of this, Davis, because of Primack. They're so focused on blocking them that these linebackers now can roam, and it creates some big opportunities. But the biggest thing, they have to start with stopping Cody Johnson. That's going to be the number one target, Lars. He is obviously their best player. They have to slow him down and try to get them into long down situation where they can rush the passer with those defensive linemen. So that's going to be really important, Mars. What are your thoughts on Briarcliff?
Yeah, Briarcliff just has so many weapons, right? And they really show this by being rated number one offense, scoring 29 points a game. I mean, I just think that as a defensive point of view, it's just so difficult to narrow down who's going to hurt you this game. And I think that, as you mentioned, they become probably the most dangerous when you have several backs in the backfield, or having more receivers on one side versus another, like heavy those trips types of sets, because now you're as a defense, you have to account for all these different players that can definitely hurt you, and I think that's going to be the most difficult thing. But the offensive line has just been really pushing people around, and I think that definitely is part of, in my opinion, the main reason why this offense has been really, really good. I mean, granted, it's great to have all these skill backs, but if you have no holes, then there's only so much those guys can do. And I think that the combination of having these offensive line be as good as they are with all these skill backs really makes them to be very dynamic. And I think they're going to basically try to push and just push dudes around. And defensively, the defense is no slouch either. Number 2 rated defense in points. I think the front has probably been the most efficient of the entire defense, and I think that they really cause a lot of havoc. And they want to try to set up Albertus Magnus to be in a long third down scenario, cause them to have to throw the ball, and let's see what happens with this pass rush. Yeah, absolutely. To me, the matchup, looking at these Briarcliff skill guys versus the number 1 defense in the independent league, something's got to give, Mars, and whoever gives is probably the other side is going to be winning that championship. All right, let's go to the next game, Mars. Let's go to the D, the annual D championship. Haldane 2-3 at Tuckahoe, who's 3-2. Again, this is a rematch of the 2019 championship. Big rivalry between these two schools. Tuckahoe won in 2019, and overall in this series, Tuckahoe has dominated in recent memory. 24-1. 24-1 tie. So not 24-1. 20 wins, 4 losses, 1 tie versus Haldane, including 2 wins in 2019, including that championship. Last week, Tuckahoe lost to Dobbs Ferry. Haldane beat Primack. And let's start with Haldane. Offensively, it's been a bit of a roller coaster this year. They've gone through some up and downs. They've had injury concerns. And when I watched last week, you didn't see Darren Santos, which is a really important cog of this offense. But what was great news is you saw Daniel Santos. He took the mantle, and boy, did he explode last week. He had over 300 yards of total offense, 3 touchdowns. He really took it upon himself to carry the load with Darren Santos not being there. And I don't know the status of Darren Santos, but if he is going to be involved in this game, he is, in my opinion, was the most consistent offensive player that they had this year. He was the engine of this offense. So obviously having him will be a huge boost, and not having him will hurt. But a guy that definitely stepped up this past game was one of their freshmen, Gianchinta. This kid played pretty well for a freshman, and he had to take the load for Darren Santos, who I didn't see play. And he stepped up. He stepped up. I was impressed by him. But if Daniel Santos can get some help, whether Darren plays or not, but if Daniel can run the ball out of quarterback sets and hit some passes to guys like Irwin, who had a long touchdown, and then throw to Gianchinta, run the ball with him a little bit, this offense can finally start to get some consistency, and I think that's when they'll be at their peak, when they have a nice balanced attack. It's not just one guy carrying the load, whether it's Darren Santos or Daniel Santos, a nice mix of both. But to me, we could talk about all the guys in the world, but up front, Mars, going against a tough Tuckahoe front, the offensive line has really got to play well if they're going to have a chance. If there's too much pressure for Daniel, that's when the turnovers start to come. And so it's going to be really important for this offense and this offensive line to really have their best game of the year. I mean, this is the time to have it. Defensively, again, I think this has been the grittiest part of this team is the defense. I know it's been up and down offensively. I think defense, they've been pretty consistent. They're ranked 4 out of the 8 teams in C and D, right? They're right behind the Tuckahoe defense. 3 games they've allowed 13 or less points. And so, what they could do is obviously they got to start with stopping the run. We know about Tuckahoe's offensive line. We know about Myers. Stopping this rush attack of Tuckahoe is going to be the number 1 priority.
And so I'm looking at this front seven, guys like Donahue. I'm looking at Pizzulo, who had a really nice game last week, 9 tackles, 2 fumble recovery touchdowns, Mars. I mean, they were scoring defensively. And their outside linebacker, again, Gianchinta. Guys like this, everyone, it's all hands on deck. I even saw Daniel Santos, which I really liked, had to play linebacker. So we're talking about quarterback playing linebacker, all hands on deck to try to win this game. And that's what Haldane's going to have to do. Mars, what are your thoughts on Haldane?
I mean, Haldane definitely has some weapons, but the big problem is going to be Darren Santos. What is he going to be playing? You know, how effective is he going to be if he is playing? And the reason why this is important is because obviously he's your key cock, right? But the fact is, Daniel Santos definitely played really well. But
and we've seen this all last year. It's been a little up and down this year. I know he had a nagging injury. So we're going to see.
It's just now you need to, if Darren is not playing, that's going to be a big loss on the offense. But it's going to then be about who's going to help Daniel Santos move the ball. And I think that was what was really good about that Darren and Daniel Santos combination, because now you know Daniel Santos was kind of like the other key cog to this along with Darren Santos, and I feel like without Darren there, now you need someone else to fill that role, and I think that that's going to be really important. But the offensive line's performance is going to be the major factor of victory, though, in my opinion, like the wild card. If they play well, then the offense is going to move well, no matter who's back there.
Yep.
But obviously, with your key players in, it's only going to move it. You'll make a lot of big plays. Defensively, I mean, they've been pretty consistent. I like the way they've been playing efficiently, but the question is going to be, how can they stop Myers? They need to win the line of scrimmage and really stop this offensive line from really pushing people around. And I think the linebackers need to be aggressive, they need to be active, and they need to meet Myers at the line of scrimmage and stop him from really breaking out. Because once he can do that, then it's game over.
Yeah. And when I go to Tucko, Mars, offensively, last week obviously was a real struggle. And I thought the offensive line got pushed around by Dobbs Ferry. And I'm looking at this offensive line to bounce back. I think they will bounce back. And we know what Tucko's identity wants to be. They want to run the ball. They want to control the tempo of the game. And they want to play good defense, right? Even the coach talked about it before the season. They're not looking for high-scoring games. They're looking to shorten the game, control the tempo of the game, and play good defense. And they think that'll be their recipe for winning games. And that's, to me, offensively, you can't allow as much penetration as you did. You can't have turnovers. You can't have penalties. These things that really put your offense in a bind and forces you to get out of your identity. And so, offensively, to me, obviously it starts with controlling the line of scrimmage better and running the ball better and just being, sometimes there's nothing wrong with a punt, right? And don't turn the ball over. Don't have big negative plays that change field position. That's going to be, key components for this offense. Defensively, again, similar to what happened with the offense, they got pushed around. They gave up some big plays. They got, kind of got gashed. And I'm looking for this defense to bounce back. Now, the big question is going to be, obviously, we talked about it, Darren Santos, if he's playing or he's not. If he is playing, he's the number one focus. If he's not, obviously the main focus goes to Daniel. And quarterback runs hurt them. And so Daniel, I'm thinking Haldane and Daniel see that, and they're going to try to take advantage of those off-tackle outside runs from the quarterback spot and some downhill runs with the quarterback. So obviously, depending on who plays, you have to have a plan for both. But I do think if they can cause some penetration and get Haldane into, they don't want to spread you out and just throw all over the field. That's not what Haldane wants to do. Right? But if you can get them in that situation and use your athleticism on the edge to create some pressure, that's when the turnovers come. And that's when we've seen Haldane kind of get into a rut. And so that's what I think Tucko is going to want to do. Mars, what are your thoughts on Tucko? Tucko's
offense is, they were pushed around last week by Dobbs Ferry. I think that it's going to be really important for this offensive line to bounce back and to really have a good showing. And, you have one of the top backs within your class. I think that Myers is really, really good,
yes,
but he needs to get that space. He needs to get open. And once he does so, he's going to make a lot of kids miss. And I think that you need to provide him those opportunities. And I think they need to be efficient. Defensively, it's all really about, in my opinion, the key matchup is going to be offensive line of Haldane versus the D line of Tuckahoe. I think this is going to be really the big showdown, right? Because I think whoever has the advantage is going to really drive the momentum in the other team's favor. I think if Tuckahoe's defense can really slow down this well efficient offensive line and really stop the Santoses from moving the ball as efficiently as they would want to, then I think you're going to get the offense back the ball. You'll see Myers make some plays, and that will give you the advantage when it comes to the points.
And you really took the words right out of my mouth. That's the matchup I'm looking at, this Haldane offensive line versus this Tuckahoe defensive front. That's going to be a huge dictator of who's going to win this D championship. All right, let's go to our game of the week, and it's the B championship, Mars. Westlake 3-1 at Byron Hills, who's 5-0, and this is a rematch from week 1 in the season that Byron Hills won. Let's start with Westlake offensively. I think they have a speed advantage over Byron Hills. We talked about it when they first played, and I still think it rings true today. But Byron Hills has a size advantage, and so to me, this is going to be the ultimate test on this offensive line against this Byron Hills front. They have some tough kids up front. They have some decent size, right? I think they're led by Bravo. They're not towering figures, right? But they got some toughness to them. Bravo's obviously the biggest guy. But this is going to be a 4-quarter fight in the trenches. And if they're going to have to win, they're going to have to put up a great fight and probably be the better unit overall for them to have that chance. I know they're going to go into under center and run the wing tee. It's going to be tough to do that consistently against the size and the linebacker play. So I'm expecting to see some spread looks. In the first week of the season, Mars, they did go to some spread looks. You saw it work sometimes. You saw it work towards the end of the game. I think you could take some good things from it. And to me, it's all about getting quarterback Matt Sardo into some space. This guy is a game wrecker, right? Once he gets into open space, he's really difficult to tackle. You saw that last week. He had 2 long touchdown runs. You know, this guy is one of the best backs in the class, and you want to create some space to him. And you want to get the ball out on the edge. You know Byron Hills is going to load up against the run. You want to get outside that initial line of defense because you have the speed to hit home run plays, and you're going to need to. Guys like Lamas, Falkenberg, Sardo, like I already talked about. It's hard to have consistent drives against Byron Hills, so you got to hit some chunk plays that are going to make the difference. And it's going to be huge if you're going to have a chance. You're going to have to hit those chunk plays, and they're going to have to hit some pass plays. That's going to be another thing. You can't just... You're going to have to hit some big pass plays. It's going to have to happen. So spread them out. If they give you off coverage, if they're playing 6-7 yards off, you're going to have to take some 50-50 chances on some of these one-on-one matchups. Defensively, we talk about this is a number 3 defense in B. It's a really solid, tough unit. They run that slant defense to the strength. They want to cause penetration with Ojeda, with Bravo. All of this is going to be really important. And to me, I think the biggest thing is stopping this dual threat at the running back spot in guys like Weiler and Fruling, right? In week 1, I thought they did a good job for a while, but it's another 4-quarter fight because they just wail on you, and then they'll hit you with some counter action and some play action, and that's when things go awry, right? You can't give up those plays. You got to stay disciplined for 4 quarters. You gotta constantly rally to the football, multiple hats to the ball because they have good size, they know how to break tackles. This is going to have to be a full group effort. There's not a guy that I'm going to point to for this defense because everyone's got to be involved. But it does start with penetrating up front, Mars. What are your thoughts on Westlake before I go to my clip that I created?
Yeah, I mean, Westlake definitely has a speed advantage, and I think that they are a very scrappy team. They're in your face all the time. They may not have a size advantage compared to Byram Hills, but they definitely have this grittiness to them, whether it's on the offensive side or defensive side. And I think it's going to be all about Sardo. Can Sardo get into the open space? Can Sardo make the big plays? And he did so all season. And I think that that's going to be kind of the formula. In my opinion, they need to be up by halftime. I mean, we've seen Byram Hills kind of have very close games by half, and I feel like when they have that game tied, they just wear on you throughout the rest of the last 2 quarters of the game, and that's where they really pull away. And I think that Westlake needs to take an advantage. They need to take the lead by halftime, whether it's a touchdown lead or even a 2-touchdown lead, to make it so that Byram can't do those run downhill type of plays. They need to make quick touchdowns, quick point plays, which is not necessarily what Byron likes to do. They like to have these long drives and really wear you down throughout the entire game and then capitalize on those big final finishes. And then when it comes to defensively, I mean, you have a lot of skill players to account for Byron Hills. I mean, Weiler and Fruling are going to be a dominant duo that we've seen all season long, and I think it's going to have to really have to be about the front. Can the front cause enough disruption to really, make Byron have to not have to key in on I think in my opinion Weiler is really the biggest deal. I think he is somebody that has a mixture of speed and strength to him, and I think you need to be efficient in how you tackle him. You can't stand up, obviously. This is kind of like some basic stuff of football, but you need to just stay pat. Cause some mayhem in the backfield, and I think that it'll give your offense more abilities to go back on the field and make big plays.
Yeah, because Westlake's offense is not a big play. You talk about Byron Hills not being a big play. They've hit big plays. Westlake, you want to get as many opportunities with the ball in your hand. So if you could force 3 and outs, if you can get Byron Hills off the field and give your offense more opportunities to try to hit some of those big plays, that's going to be Westlake's best chance. But I did do a breakdown on Westlake and some of the things they might be able to do offensively and kind of dive into the tape that we saw week 1. And I want the audience to take a look. For this video, we're going to talk about Westlake's offense and what they could potentially do against this Byron Hills defense. And the first time they played them back in week 1, it was a struggle offensively to move the ball and score points. And Byron Hills knows that Westlake likes to run the ball, whether it's under center in the wing T concepts or out in the spread. And they want to load the box and stop the run. But in week 1, we did see some plays throughout the game and even late in the game that Westlake can take as positives and may be able to bring back to the table in this week and build on. And you could see right away, again, it would be tough sledding, and I'm expecting Westlake to try it, coming out of the wing T in the center stuff, and try to run downhill and off tackle and outside using some counter action, some sweep action. When they go into the spread, what I think this opens up for them is giving their playmakers some space, their quarterback Sardo, some of their tailbacks in Lamas and Falkenberg, because they have the speed to hit big chunk plays, and you're going to need to against this Byron Hills defense. And you can see they're going to come out in 2v2 on this particular play. And if you look at Byron Hills, they got 7 guys by the line of scrimmage. Even though they're coming out 2v2 and spread looks, they want guys around the line of scrimmage because they know Westlake wants to run the football. And if you can see on the outside, these guys are playing off. I mean, they're about 7 yards off the receiver. On the bottom here, that looks like about a cover 2 concept. But again, look at the space between the second receiver and the safety, right? Westlake's going to have to take advantage, both in passing the ball and creating space for their runners. And this is an easy way to do it. Offense is going to do a rollout. They're going to pass the ball. You're going to see a post. You're going to see a wheel. You're going to see a backside drag. They're going to get quarterback Sardo on the edge. And when the offense does this, the defense, when he rolls out to the offense's left, you're going to see the play side backer is going to contain him, rush the passer. Backside is going to drop into coverage. But because of the speed of these skill guys, it puts a lot of pressure on the defense to stay in their lanes and to not over pursue. And this is what Westlake got to take advantage of. I mean, defensively, they do a pretty good job of coverage. It's hard to see what the middle defender is doing on this post, but they got pretty good leverage on the outside right here. This is a tough throw on the backside drag. Linebacker does a pretty good job getting some depth. But look what the pressure of the speed of Sardo does on a defense. They are over pursuing right now. It's leaving a lane on the backside, and he takes advantage of that. And Westlake will need to take advantage of that. Right? Once your read's not there, this guy is a game breaker. We saw it last week. We saw it throughout the season. Get him in open space. Get him in open space because he can cause some havoc. Again, watch him. Okay? It's little things you could take from even bad losses. This is what you want. You want your playmakers in space because he's one of the toughest kids to tackle in space. Let's go to another play. Again, 2v2 concept. 7 guys in the box. This is later in the game. I don't care about the personnel. Just look at the concept, though. Guys playing off, right? 3rd down and long. But you can do this on early downs. If they're playing off, you're going to have to hit some pass plays. You're going to have to take some chances against this tough defense. Offensively, they're just going to throw it. Pretty much hike and throw to this inside receiver. Going to get a block from the outside receiver on the second defender. But the concept, get your receivers the ball in space and let them work. Now the pressure is going to be on these backs to make plays. But if they want to win this B title, they're going to have to. Right? Because you can't let them just load the box. And this is a way that they can help that. Getting these playmakers in space. I'm interested to see what Westlake does to try to get that space that I talk about and get these playmakers in the open field. Going to Byron Hills, Mars. Offensively, we know the run game is the biggest part of this offense. And they'll give you some spread looks. They'll give you their version of heavy looks, which is bringing in an H-back, bringing in tight end. But you're going to get a heavy dose of Weiler and Fruling. I mean, they have been the dynamic duo. Both have been explosive. Both have hit big-time plays. And I'm expecting to see the same thing. And I think they have a strength advantage like we talked about. The big thing with this offensive line, Mars, you have to prevent penetration. Westlake wants to get you behind the chains and want to be aggressive. They'll send some stunts. They'll have this defensive line try to shoot gaps because they want to get into the backfield and tackle you in the backfield. So it's going to be important for this lineman to move their feet. Again, everything doesn't have to be you drive 5 yards down the field. Just seal them off, right? Seal them off so that get these backs an opportunity like Fruling and Weiler to hit some big plays and just stick with it, right? Keep hitting them. And if these backs get into the second level, and start hitting these linebackers and start hitting these secondary and these linemen constantly running around, eventually the counteraction is really going to work, right? They're going to fake it to Weiler and Fruling's going to pull it. Or if Fruling's going to fake a run and hand it off to Weiler. And that's when those big plays come. And then, that's when you'll start seeing also that play action guys like Weinhoff, who's made plays all over the field. But to me, this is the number one offense. It's because they can hit some dynamic plays, and the biggest thing that they do well, Mars, is wear you down. And that's going to be big for this offense. But another thing is, you have the number one offense. Don't give the defense confidence. Don't have penalties. Don't have turnovers, right? Play a clean game. That'll suck the life out of Westlake, because if they hit some big plays, if they force some turnovers, they'll start building confidence. And then that's when, when you try to start chipping away at them, it's going to be a little more difficult to do. Defensively, this is also the number one defense, Mars. And, this, I think, you're going to see Westlake go into the wing T stuff under center. You're going to go out into the spread stuff. I think they're really going to try to get guys like Sardo, Lamas, and Falkenberg into some space. So it's going to be big. We know Byron Hill's going to load the box, especially when they go under center. But even when they come out in spread looks, you're going to see 7 men in the box, 5 men on the line of scrimmage. It's going to be important for these guys to make plays in open field. And the big thing is to try to keep Sardo in the box. So this is going to be a big focus on your linebackers like Aben Marco, Ahern, even the secondary, because Byron is going to trust the secondary to match up one-on-one. And so they're going to have to make some plays in the open field and tackle in the open field. And if they can do that, I think that they will have some success. If they can get them back behind the chains and force Sardo to throw in the pocket, this pass rush can get after you. And that's when their defense, Byron Hill's defense, forces some turnovers. Mars, what are your thoughts on Byron Hills?
Yeah, Byron Hills has a lot of weapons. I think that the priority is going to be looking at Weiler and Fruling as being the main 2 keys of this offense in general, and what I think defenses, specifically Westlake, should be looking for. I think they're definitely going to love to run the ball with these two, and they're going to either try to run downhill, especially with this advantage on the size. And I think that once they start to establish the run, then that opens up a lot of what your playbook can look like. I think that you can add in some misdirection, you can add in some passes, and you have a lot of skill players on the outsides as well that can make those plays. And I think that that's going to be key for this Byron Hills team, is to really establish the run, push some guys around, and then open up a lot of your fancier plays that come alongside your playbook. Defensively, I mean, they're also top-notch defense in B, and I think that Westlake's job, the whole role is to run the ball, whether it's at wing T sets or out of spread sets. And I think that it's going to be Sardo's going to be the priority, right? I mean, granted, you have a lot of good skill players on your team if you're Westlake, but the reality is Sardo is your top guy, and I think that if you can limit them out what Sardo can do, then I think Byron Hills, the rest of their skill players, can handle what Westlake can throw at them. And I think that that's the priority. Not a lot of teams have Sardo, right? Byron Hills has a lot of guys that are very good and near to the level of Sardo. I just think that their priority is going to stop Sardo from making big plays.
And to me, Mars, I did a video on Byron Hills defense and did a little film room, and I want the audience to take a look. For this video, we're going to talk about Byron Hill's defense. And, this is a very strong unit. They're the number 1 in Class B, and for a good reason. They do a good job of stopping the run with the play of their defensive linemen and edge defenders and linebackers who are very aggressive and read diagnose plays pretty well. And what they like to do is stop the runs and get you in 2nd and 3rd and long so that they could rush the passer and that they can make plays in the secondary to force some turnovers. And they've been doing that all season, and we'll go over a couple plays. This first one is against Westlake, their next opponent in the championship. And Westlake, they'll come out in some wing T stuff under center. They'll come out in some spread, and I'm expecting them to see some spread, definitely see some spread in this next game. They have 2 receivers to the left, tight end, flanker out to the right. And they're going to try to spread you out to run the ball. And you're going to see that, right? Defensively, Byron Hills knows they like to run the ball. They'll put 7 guys in the box, 5 guys on the line of scrimmage to put extra bodies at the point of attack. Offensively, they're going to motion this guy in the slot. The quarterback's going to read. They can either hand it off to the jet or he's going to keep it, come up the middle. Now, what makes this Byron Hills defense successful is their ability to tackle an open field and tackle one-on-one in the hole with some good running backs. This is a very good back right here. And it just gives kudos to this defensive line and linebacking core for them to be able to do that. Tackle an open field, tackle one-on-one in the hole. These are important traits for a good defense. So let's show it. You're going to see him. They're going to motion out, fake the outside run, but the defender does a good job, right? He does a good job not going too far up the field, just enough depth. I would like to see him have a little bit better leverage on this blocker so he doesn't seal him. But, did you see the 2 linebackers? Right, watch the 2 linebackers. Both stepping forward. Tight end gets a really good block on the play side, but watch this backside guy attacking the line of scrimmage right away. You're going to see a lineman run right by him, right? But because he's being aggressive, the lineman does not see him. Aggressiveness forces mistakes. And look at him make that tackle one-on-one in the hole with one of the better backs in the class. You see that all year with this defense. Okay, and watch from the top. When someone else makes a mistake, someone else picks up the slack. And you see, the play side linebacker is slightly delayed. He gets a nice hit from that play side tight end, but the backside linebacker cleans it up. Look at him make the play right there. Let's go to another play. When they stop the run, and they've done a really good job of that this year, that's when they like to rush the passer, right? And going up against a guy like Sardo, it's really important to prevent those rollout plays. Get the quarterback outside of the pocket. So there's going to be some extra pressure on these edge guys. But these guys do a good job rushing the passer. Okay? They like to force turnovers. Get to the quarterback. So you're going to see. Okay? They're going to run a short drag, a deep drag, a fade. Quarterback wants to throw the football. But watch these defensive linemen and edge defenders work. You're going to see from the outside. You're going to see from the inside. Watch them work. Okay. Really good job. Again, doesn't just run up the field. He engages that guy, disengages. This quarterback doesn't have much room to go. Look at the inside rush. And then forcing bad decisions by a quarterback. Again, there's the pressure. There's the overthrow. There's the INT. And watch the defender do the rest. This is a house call. Putting points on the board from your defense. Right? From the top. Again, they want to get you in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, so they can get after the quarterback. Rush the passer, hit the quarterback, force some turnovers. Byron Hills has been doing this all season. And for them to win the title, they're going to be bringing it again defensively. All right, Mars, the matchup I'm looking at these Westlake linebackers versus duo of Weiler and Fruling, who's been so potent this year. They're going to have to be extremely active. They're going to have to tackle well. It's going to have to be a Herculean effort for these groups. And the player to watch, I'm going to go with a lineman, and it's going to be a Westlake lineman. I'm talking Vincent Bravo, offensive lineman and defensive lineman. He's the biggest guy on the line for them. Yeah, I thought he had a really good week last week defensively. I thought he's had a really solid season. I think he's going to have to be the best lineman on the field to really kind of tilt the scale, especially on defense. And I think he has the capabilities to do it. This is a good player, and he's going to have to really show out for Westlake to pull off this upset and win a B championship. All right, Mars, are you ready to pick the games?
I'm ready to roll, man.
All right, let's do it. Let's start with the C matchup. Rhinebeck 0-4 at Bronxville, who's 5-0. Bronxville has that, Bronxville's that team that has one of the most dominating runs that not enough people talk about. Like, it's been like a foregone conclusion now for weeks that they're the best team in C, and they just continue to dominate. They have the number 1 defense in C, and it's the number 2 defense in Section 1 behind only Somers. They have the number 1 offense in points scored in all of Section 1. They have elite play at each level. I think Bronxville is going to put the cherry on the cake at the end of this season. 6-0, one of the best teams they've had in a long time. I'm going with Bronxville in this one, Mars.
As the Skip Bayless for for Bronxville, I'm sure a lot of Bronxville players are looking for me to say that I'm not picking them, but I am going to pick them this week. And it's quite simply put, they're proving themselves to be a team that if there was a state tournament, they would be vying for that state tournament. Yeah. And I think they're just on a historical run, and I think they just shown their dominance. I think they're going to win this game pretty handily against Rhinebeck.
Let's stick with the C matchup. Blindbrook 0-4 at Valhalla, who's 4-1. I think Blindbrook, they made some nice plays in the passing game. I'm glad that they had football back this year. I saw some nice things offensively in the recent game that I watched with them. But Valhalla has been a really impressive team. They have won 4 straight. They have contributions from multiple people, guys like Davis, O'Neal, Robinson. Valhalla's been on a nice run, and they've had to figure it out. The coaching staff deserves a lot of credit when their quarterback went down to try to find a new identity. And I think they're going to win the game, and they're going to end the season on a high note, going 5-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go Valhalla too. I feel like the momentum is pushing them forward. And I think that whenever a team is cooking like this, I think that it just keeps them going. They're hitting on all cylinders. Their coaching's on point. Players are they're on point. I think this is just going to be another big win for Valhalla.
Let's go to the Independent League. Marks the 3rd place game among the small schools. Hastings 3-2 at Edgemont, who's 2-1. This is a rematch from last week's game where Edgemont won. I thought turnovers were huge in that game. Edgemont had that big pick 6 by the goal line that went about 98 yards. And that was the big, that was a big backbreaker for Hastings. But I am going to go with Hastings, Mars. I think Hastings gets revenge. It's really difficult for one team to beat another team 2 times in the same season. It's even more difficult to do it in back-to-back weeks. I think Hastings gets some revenge, and I do think they win this game. I'm going with Hastings.
I mean, this is a tough one. I picked Hastings last week, and it was a tough loss on my picks. But I'm going to go Hastings. I'm going to kind of stick with my pick from last week, and I think I agree with you completely. I think beating a team twice in season is difficult. Beating them 2 weeks in a row is difficult, and I think Hastings is definitely going to try to key off on some of their mistakes and build off of this and try to really come away with a positive win here. I'm going to go with Hastings.
Absolutely. Let's stick with the Independent League. Croton Harmon 1-4 at Irvington, who's 1-3. Excuse me. This is a rematch from Week 1 where Irvington won, and in that game, Mars, Anna Carrico had a big day running the football. Croton Harmon, I've talked about this. I like a couple of the guys that they have. Letta's had a nice season. Grease has had a really solid season, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I'm going to go with Irvington. I think the front of Irvington is going to be too much for Croton Harmon to handle. And I think Anna Carrico is going to have another big day. I think this rush attack is going to have a pretty solid day. That's going to keep them ahead of the chains and not force them to be throwing the ball behind. And that's going to be important for Irvington, who's also pretty gritty on defense. So I'm going to go Irvington on this one. I think Irvington wins.
Yeah, I'm going to go Croton Harmon. I've kind of picked them a few times, and I really like the way this team plays. And I know this is going to be a tough matchup for sure, but I feel like Croton Harmon just has this feeling about them, this momentum that's building on them. And on top of that, they've already played against Irvington. I feel like this is going to be a very difficult thing for Irvington to win against. I think Croton Harmon is going to come away with a win here.
Let's go to C. Woodlands 0-4 at Dobbs Ferry, who's 3-2. Dobbs Ferry, we know about their offense. They're the number 2 offense out of the C and D schools. But what impressed me the most is his defense has stepped up. They've allowed 14 points over the last 2 weeks combined. And I'm going with Dobbs Ferry. They've impressed me the last couple of weeks. We know about their explosiveness offensively, but they can continue to play the defense that they are and prevent big plays against themselves. I think they win this game, and I think they're going to win it pretty handily. So I'm going with Dobbs Ferry.
Yeah, I'm going Dobbs Ferry. I feel like I picked Dobbs Ferry the most this entire season, and I think they're going to win. I really like the way the Dans have been playing, and I feel like they have been clicking more recently, and I feel like this is going to be a good win for them.
Let's go to the B matchup. Pleasantville 2-3 at Nanuet, who's 2-3. This is obviously you're not going to pick this game, but I am. This is one of the most difficult games I had to pick because these are two very gritty defensive teams where offenses have been up and down. Right, and both teams have had some beat up, injuries and stuff like that. It's been hard, but I am going to go with Nanuet, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Nanuet's coming off that big victory. Pleasantville has had a couple really tough losses. Some of them have been close for a while, and I feel that they're a little beat up. And so I think Nanuet is riding a little bit high off their big victory. Guys like Azima, Ursi, Knapp on the offensive and defensive lines. And this power running game, this is going to be a very low-scoring game, and I do believe it. But I do think, guys like Moran and Ryan will hit one or two big plays, and Frondy on his rollouts is going to be big. We've seen Pleasantville give up some big plays on defense, and it's usually, on some outside runs and outside plays or some counteraction. And if they don't, they got to make sure that their edge defenders are disciplined because Nanuet's quarterback can roll out and he can hit some big plays with his legs. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think he'll hit one or two big plays, and I think Nanuet's going to win. Mar, let's go to the next game. Independent League, let's go to the champions. Right, Mount Vernon 3-1 at Ossining, who's 3-1. I'm going to go Ossining. I think Ossining wins this game. I think they have the correct formula to try to beat a Mount Vernon team, which is power running game, control the tempo of the game, and on defense prevent the big play. And because Mount Vernon has some nice size that opens things up for their running backs, Ossining has a good counter because of their size. So it's not that easy to move guys around, and it allows the back end of the Ossining defense to be aggressive and to roam free. And I think Ossining is going to be the big league independent champions, Mars.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to agree. I think that Ossining does have this strength to them that definitely makes them a force to reckon with. And I know that Mount Vernon also has strength. I just feel like Ossining just has more of other things that they are more capable of, and they have more skill around them. And I just feel like Ossining just will have the slight advantage. It'll be a close game, but I think they'll just pull ahead and limit the big plays. So I'm going to go Ossining.
Let's go to the small school independent championship. Mars Albertus Magnus 4-1 at Briarcliff, who's 3-0. This is another really tough one for me, but I do think Briarcliff is going to end up on top. Albertus Magnus deserves a boatload of credit. Coach Cotter, I think he's in the running for Coach of the Year in the independent league. I like the grit that this team showed, bouncing back from last year's tough season. But I just think Briarcliff has too much. I think this is the year for Briarcliff. They have too many weapons on offense and good play on both fronts, and that's going to be the big difference in this game. At this front, on the offensive and defensive line, really allows these skill guys to make some big-time plays, and I think it continues, and Briarcliff is going to win this game, Mars.
Now, I'm going to go against the mold here. I'm going to go Albertus Magnus. I feel like they have been having one of those Cinderella seasons. I feel like they have been playing really well on all fronts, and I think that they are just carrying this momentum with them. I know Briarcliff is like that Goliath, right? I feel like they're going to be the David in this story, and they're going to try to go against the Goliath, and I think they're going to pull off a victory here. It's a tough one. I mean, I've been picking Briarcliff a lot this season. I think in Albertus
for good reason.
Honestly, I've been picking both these teams a lot this season, and they've been winning me a lot of these game picks, and I think I'm going to go Albertus Magnus in this one.
Let's go to the D championship, Mars. Haldane 2-3 at Tuckahoe, who's 3-2. We've talked about the historic part. We talked about the recent memory. Tuckahoe is a real, let's just talk about both these teams. Haldane, gritty defensive team, up and down offensively. Health coming into a concern. We look at Tuckahoe. They kind of took a beating last week. How do they rebound? The offensive line didn't play that great. It's a really interesting dynamic. Who comes out the D championship, Mars? I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, Tuckahoe has this offensive line with Myers as almost like a duo of sorts, and they've been really playing really well recently. The defensive line has been stepping up, especially. And when you look at Haldane, the Santoses have been really impressive all season. The offensive line has been crucial to a lot of their success. But I feel like I'm going to go Tuckahoe. I feel like the question of whether or not Darren Santos is going to play is already playing a factor, and on top of that, you don't know how well he's going to be coming forward. And let's just say that Darren Santos doesn't play, and that means Daniel Santos has to really take the helm. Yeah. And the question is going to be who is going to be there to help him along the way. I think that Tuckahoe has a more reliable kind of combination going with the offensive line that's playing really well, with Myers, who's been dominant all season. I think that Tuckahoe is a very good team, and I think they're going to win here.
I'm actually going to go against the mold on this one. I'm going to go Haldane. I think Haldane pulls off the upset. I would feel a lot better if I knew, obviously, the status of Darren, because I do think he's a really good player, and having both Santoses playing at a high level is very tough to stop. But I do think they find a way. I mentioned Ginta, as a freshman coming in to fill in that void. If he plays, and if Daniel plays the way he did last week, it will not be, again, going against a tougher front in Tuckahoe than they saw last week. If the offensive line can hold strong and Daniel can play at the level that I know he can play, I think Haldane can pull off the upset, and I think they can win, and I am going to predict that they do in the D Championship. All right, Mars, the final one, the B Championship. Westlake has been in the B title game 4 out of the last 6 years. Mars, Byron Hills is looking for its first ever section title, I believe, since the 1990s, I think, since the playoff era. So the question I have is, does Westlake go back to the mountaintop, be one of the more prominent teams that they've always been in B, or does Byron Hills find its first title?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, my thing is this. You look at this Westlake team. I'll talk Westlake first. They have a lot of speed to them. They've been very gritty. They've been in your face. And when you look at how their defense has been playing, they've been playing every team tough, right? That was kind of like one of their strong suits. Yeah. And I feel like they've always kept teams close. And, the games that they lost have been, have been very,
it was battles.
Yeah, it was a battle. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like Westlake has proven itself to be a very good team in this class. And even when you thought that they wouldn't win the game, they came out and they showed up. I mean, look at the Ardsley game as being a game of a big shock for a lot of people. I think that when you look at Byron Hills now, the other point of view, Byron Hills has a lot of weapons. They have a lot of ability behind them, and and I kind of made this case before when I did the team breakdown. I think that Westlake has Sardo, right? Byron Hills has a lot of those type of players, and I'm not saying that they're at the same level, but a lot of guys that are maybe slightly below Sardo. And I think that that's going to give me the reason to say I think Byron Hills is going to win this game. And I think they're going to win because they're going to follow the formula that's worked for them all season long, and that's going to be using their key weapons to kind of bulldoze these defenses and then make the big plays when the teams have been tired out. I think that's going to be the crucial thing for why I pick Byron Hills to win this section.
First off, I really like the Westlake team. I really like the Byron Hills team. These are two, in my opinion, the two best teams are going off against each other. I always feel that the team that lost earlier in the season has the advantage, whatever it is, it's psychological, because they're the underdogs and they had that underdog edge, and the pressure is on the favorite, which is Byron Hills, right? So that is an important dynamic. But I'm going to say this. To answer the question, if both these teams play the best that they could play, both of them play the best that they could play, who would be the winner? I think Byron Hills would. And that's why I'm going to go with Byron Hills. If both teams play their very best, Byron Hills is a better football team. And that's why I think Byron Hills captures its first title. I really love the grit of both teams. A bunch of players I liked and we talked about over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, I think when it's all said and done, if both the teams play their best, I think Byron Hills is the better team. And I do think they find a way to win this game. And they're going to win their first title. All right, everyone, that was our show. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. I hope you guys have a safe and sports-filled weekend. I know this is our last show, so it's going to be a little bit, but we'll see you all very soon.